This is SciByte, episode 111 for December 3rd, 2013. And welcome to SciByte, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly science podcast, live on a Tuesday and fresh on a Wednesday over at jupiterbroadcasting.com. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, Heather. Hey there, Heather.
Hey there, Chris.
Hey, Heather. Happy science to you.
Happy science.
All right, Heather. What are we going to talk about today?
Today, we're going to take a look at how you remember things, 3D printing dinosaur bones, a SpaceX launch, India's Mars orbiter mission, China's lunar rover, and as always, take a peek back into history and up in the sky this week.
That sounds fantastic, Heather. We better get started before I forget about our first story. All right, where do we start in the news tonight?
I see where you went with that. Forget the first news story.
You see what I did?
It was very clever.
Thanks.
Very, very clever.
Thank you.
All right, so using a video game in which people navigated through some sort of virtual town, delivering
I'm sold. That's all. I'm good.
Yeah, virtual reality game. There we go. But they have actually deliver objects to specific locations. A team of neuroscientists have discovered how brain cells that lock in spatial information, sort of what the article called geotags, for specific memories are activated right before those memories are recalled.
Like when you smell something, like parts of your brain are activated and then you recall something, that kind of thing?
That kind of recollection. Recollection.
Yeah.
But it's more along the lines of spatial memory, like exactly where you are. So it's a combination of when they were walking around this map, they were allowed to wander around this little room for, this little virtual town for a little while.
Yeah.
And then they said, okay, here, you found the hardware store? Here, go deliver something to the hardware store. And when they got there, they say, congratulations, you delivered a screwdriver. And they'd say, all right, now go to this other store. When they got there, they'd say, all right, you delivered a blank. So it was when they got to the location, they found out what they delivered. And so then when they went back, and then they said, all right, well, now, blank the screen out. Now, remember as many of the items as you delivered in the order that they came to mind. So that's sort of this correlation went through and said, okay, well, how are they connecting the location that it happened at? In this specific case, they actually had, sometimes in epilepsy, neurologists will embed some electrodes in the brain to help with the epilepsy.
Yeah.
And so they actually had a group of people that had that essentially system wired up. So they actually had very deep scanning into the brain for these people.
I kind of do something the reverse of this. I use geolocation on my smartphone to remind me to do something when I get to a location, because I'll forget it. But if I save kind of frequent locations to my phone that I go to, like the grocery store or back when I was going to a client's office, then I can mark those as locations in my to-do app, and then I say, okay, the next time I'm at this location, the GPS pings that I'm here remind me to do X, because I don't ever remember. And by the time I go there the next time, I won't remember, but the phone remembers for me.
Yeah, well, in this study, they showed that if they could actually show them a picture of where they were, then the researchers kind of predict whether or not they recall the proper thing. So now, of course, they can't really distinguish whether they're actually helping pull up those memories. They just kind of see both areas activate, where it's in the hippocampus, which is...
They don't actually know what it means, they just know it's been triggered.
Well, they don't know precisely whether one is triggering the other. Yeah, it's just that they see activity in the hippocampus where tracking location information and spatial memory events. So they're seeing while they're trying to remember, let's see, I delivered a screwdriver, I delivered a birthday cake, while they're remembering what they delivered, then the memory center for locations started lighting up. So they can see there's definitely some sort of correlation there. Now, I kind of viewed that as like, for people giving directions, often I do a lot better with visual cues.
Yeah, me too.
So, by the way, Google Maps Street View is the best thing ever for that for me.
Yeah, sure.
Because then all right, I have to take a right on Florida. So then I drop down onto that street. I'm like, okay, that's there.
What's this intersection look like? What's the light situation? What should I be expecting? What lane do I need to be in? All that stuff.
Oh yeah, so it's definitely that where I see the picture of it and I'm like, oh yes. And then I remember what I should do.
Yeah. I also use it like, okay, once I get to the destination, what's the front door kind of look like? That's very handy as well.
The best thing ever. I had a new doctor office that was buried deep inside this stupid hospital. And so, of course, the parking lots, there's 4 different parking lots, 6 stories tall. So I took my phone out and I snapped photos. I'm like, I'm on this level.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And like, as I hit each intersection or each elevator, I like took a picture or like all the signs as I went to the office.
Made your own breadcrumbs.
So I could follow my way back. And at one point there was a security guard like looking at me. I'm like, I'm finding my way back.
Don't worry. I'm not doing anything weird.
But it was that thing where I'd see the picture of it and I'd be like, oh yes, I go this way. So yeah, there's a lot of course, everyone is able to remember things differently, but it's kind of talk to me because I'm very visual in that fashion.
Yeah, I could see that. And it's interesting mixing in the virtual reality aspect of it too, to kind of trigger, if you can get an area to look enough like the real place, so that way you can kind of implant some of those suggestions or memories or help trigger them. That's a really fascinating use of virtual reality. And Heather, one day, I assure you, the holodeck.
They'll be able to study it like that.
Yeah, they'll just put you on a holodeck and say, "Have at it, Haas," and go remember to your green in the face.
That's what they're going to make the holodeck.
Originally,
for these
that
sort
and
of studies.
That and other things that we won't get into. But yeah, all right, Heather. Any other thoughts on that story?
No, if I can remember them.
Oh, geez.
Oh, yes. There we go. One last one.
All right, well, let's take a quick break right here because I got something kind of fun and kind of exciting. So, boy, crazy couple of weeks here at the Jupiter Broadcasting headquarters. We've been discontinued from Amazon with our affiliate program, and we're trying to help raise some income for the end of the year to get us through the rest of the year. And we decided to do something fun. That way everybody can get themselves something and still help us out. So we have launched a limited edition Jupiter Broadcasting shirt. It will only be available for 1 week and 4 days more from this here broadcast. And Heather, we have a long sleeve shirt, but I know it's cold where you're at. So today, we also launched a hoodie. So you can get a hoodie, a Jupiter Broadcasting hoodie, and get all warm. We've also got a ladies' tee in there and a regular t-shirt if folks want a regular Jupiter Broadcasting t-shirt. So if you go to teespring.com/Jupiter2014, we'll also have a link in the sidebar on every page on Jupiter Broadcasting. So teespring.com/Jupiter2014, and you can get the Epic 2014 t-shirt or hoodie or long sleeve, whatever you want. And we're right now at 358 of 499. Now, no shirts unlock if we don't reach 499. I'm hopeful. I think we're going to make it because we're making good progress. We still have a week to go. And I think we're going to get there. And then we'll have a brand new Jupiter Broadcasting shirt. And you can get one for yourself, get one for family members, give out the gift of Jupiter Broadcasting. I mean, you could if you were an animal and you wanted to attack it like an animal attacks it. You could be a shark if you want. I'm down with that. I don't know what that means. Anyways, teespring.com/Jupiter2014. Help us get through the rest of the year and also get yourself a great shirt. I really like the way that logo turned out. And that bright white on that dark black is going to look awesome. All right, Heather.
Looks good.
Should we move into the news bite?
Let's go.
All right, what are we talking about in the news bite?
Alrighty. 3D printing dinosaur bones.
Of course.
So actually we did a covered a very similar story in Special SciByte a few weeks ago that Nikki and I did. That was about 3D printing in dinosaur bones.
Okay.
In this specific story, during World War II, a bomb fell onto the Museum of National History in Berlin on the East Wing, which collapsed a whole basement where all these dinosaur fossils were stored. Now, those bones that weren't blasted into dust had all their labels were burned off. No one could really identify. And in order to protect them, they'd been just slathered in concrete jackets. So all they have is these chunks of concrete that have no label, have no anything to them. So they were trying to figure out what to do. So what they were able to do is they knew in this area there were bones from 2 separate expeditions that they had. One to Tanzania and one to Germany, Halsbadats, Germany.
Halsbadats. I don't know.
Yes.
I'm just trying.
And what made it even more fun was if you could sort of make out any letters that were on it. On one expedition, all the letters were based upon where they were found. And in the other expedition, they were all based upon what kind of animal it was. So there was a confusion of that as well.
Yeah.
So a recent study picked out one of these specific fossils. They went, okay, we're going to look at this one and see what happens. So they took it out and it's encased in this concrete still. So that's what they did to transport it to Berlin in the first place. So they put it in a CT scanner. And from that, they revealed that it was a vertebrae from Platysaurus. And they're able to and from that CT scan, they were actually able to use a 3D printer to print out a copy of this fossil. And from that, they're able to that's partly what helped them to identify it. And from there, they're able to compare it against sketches from those scans a long time ago and show, hey, this is where it came from. If it was this dinosaur and it looks like this, it came from this specific spot in this dig in Germany. And they say because of the scans showed fractures and they printed it out and they're like, yep, some of these fractures are from fossilization. And you'll find that in a lot of fossils. And then there was one corner of it that was definitely crunched up that was probably from the bombing. But so they did that and were from the 3D printout, they were able to kind of take all the different pieces chipped off that were in the rock and say, hey, here's a bone chip from the damage. Plop, if it's right into the vertebrae, right here where we think it would have broken off.
Yeah.
Just like great.
They made their own puzzle piece.
They did. And this is the kind of technology that's really going forward because you can essentially rip the fossil out of the rock without having to do anything to the rock.
Right.
But the story that I covered a few weeks ago, what happened, it was a fossil from a quarry here in Colorado. And the specific rock that it was in is very, very hard. And you have to chip away at the rock in order to get to the fossil. But just the vibrations of getting it out of the rock could damage the fossil itself.
Yeah.
So in that case, they were able to scan it and 3D print out these fossils and say now they can get hands-on, kind of look at it without putting any damage to the fossil itself. So in this way, in general takes where there's something, they can scan out things that are perhaps in a very delicate situation where you might harm the fossil, or with these, blocks of concrete with fossils inside them, they can go through and they can scan and possibly print out some of these and say, okay, well, this one's cool, this one's cool. Ooh, this one's very cool. We're going to put it to the side. And that's going to be on the top of the list to try to extract from the concrete and the rock whenever we can get a chance. So kind of let them go through these things and get quick hands-on view, quote-unquote quick hands-on view of what's exactly in there, looking at it. And so it's definitely a technique that's speeding up the process of being able to look at fossils, keeping them kind of safe.
Right, with still getting to answer the questions without having to actually damage the fossil. That's so nice.
Yeah. I mean, if we can delay it by a couple of years, we're like, okay, well, we can get hands on this for a couple of years, and maybe in a few years there's safer techniques to remove it, or any way along those lines.
Yeah. Very nice. All right, Heather, well, I'm going to bring the band in. They've been eating Thai food, so I'm not sure how they're going to do. But hey, guys, come on, let's go. All right, here we go. Everybody news time, Heather. Good job, guys. Thank you. All right,
Good job.
So what are we talking about in the 2Byte news?
Alrighty. In this last week, SpaceX was actually going for a launch.
Right.
On things, well, it was supposed to be starting on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And there was some minor glitch and it got delayed till Thanksgiving Day. And actually that was going to be, like the first Thanksgiving Day launch in so many years.
Yeah.
And they have the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Engines blast off.
Oh, really?
And they stop.
Oh.
It was moments away from liftoff when the computer detected that the engines were building up thrust too slowly.
Oh.
So it automatically switched it off. Went to, seconds before the launch time, the computer was able to catch it and say, no, this is going to fail. Click.
Yeah.
Stop. So they went through and they were trying to resolve the problem. They saw that it was a pressure in one of the tanks problem. So they're like, okay, well, can we raise that? And it'll be fine. They weren't comfortable enough with it in order to do it. So they went ahead and delayed it again. However, December 3rd.
That's today.
That is today, the day this show was recorded. They're actually able to lift off.
Oh, good.
And so it is now, the big part of this one specifically is that it is the first entry that they've had to some large commercial satellites. This is actually getting into a geostationary orbit. So this means that it kind of steps into the realm of large communications.
Right.
So once they can do that, they're like, okay, well, this is the first time that there's been a commercial launch from this specific launch pad in Florida. And it kind of gives them the first commercial launch from there. Well, yeah, the first commercial launch is what I just said.
Yeah.
But so it really gives them a chance to break into a new realm and say, okay, well, now there's another option. If there's weather satellites or communication satellites from somebody, now they have a new person. They can be like, hey, SpaceX, can you deliver this to us?
Right.
Now, from this specific launch pad, they actually have another 50 launches that they have planned. And actually over 60% of them are for commercial customers, not just governmental. And so being able to do this, means that they are now in the telecommunication satellite market. And it's also, they're trying to go for some certification. This is the second of 3 certification flights that they need to fly missions for the U.S. Air Force under the Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle Program. Essentially, when it's certified, then they'll be eligible to compete for all the national security space missions as well. So they're going forward with the commercial stuff. They're getting certification for, U.S. Air Force, national security space stuff. So they're really moving forward with all this stuff being open as much as they can and being able to serve as many people as they can.
It blows my mind how fast they move. And the fact that we've been able to pretty much watch this whole thing, it is such a contrast from, it seems like when we're doing government space launches, it was years between big events, and now they're doing months. And we've seen them gone from, they've done a test launch to, now we're doing commercial stuff and we're getting into the heavy satellites. That's just so crazy.
Yeah. I remember all the test launches and, hey, they're going to think about going to the space station.
Yeah.
Now the space station deliveries are getting routine for them, and now they're going to all these satellite launches. It's really for them, they are on a time limit. They say, okay, we have so many customers to sell with this. We need to move forward and get it at a specific rate and do it on a decent, pay scale for us and move on to the next item on the agenda as quickly as they can.
Absolutely true. Heather, the SciByte 2000 says, we have some updates.
That is right. The Comet Ison. Oh, dear Comet Ison.
Right, this was ice versus fire, right? This was a big deal. This was...
Yes, last year there were so high hopes. It was going to be the Comet of Century.
That's right, yeah.
I add all my echoes in.
Century.
And I was like,
maybe
we'll
not.
See.
Yeah, don't get your hopes too up.
And then if you went a little while ago in early October, Somebody asked me about it again, and I went, oh, well, it's kind of looking iffy,
Mm-hmm.
but now it has had its time. It has had its moment of glory, and it was pretty much 15 minutes of glory for it. So
It
they,
didn't make it, did it, Heather?
that was the weird thing. It survived its trip around the sun.
Oh.
So they were able to, they're able to see it as it went around the sun. The comet appeared in the view of the European Space Agency's satellite, and then on the early the 27th, on the 28th, it appeared to kind of brighten again, and then it was weird because as it was heading to it, they could kind of see it, and then I forget which one of the satellites, it was gone.
Oh.
They didn't see anything about it. They're like, oh, there he goes. There was a big clamor, like, that's it, show's over. And then it showed up again.
Oh.
Not only did it show up again, it started brightening again.
Oh.
Which confused everyone. And so then all the scientists are going, science is weird, isn't it? They were like, comets are very hard to explain.
Right.
And then it would dim again, and it's going dimmer and dimmer. So the theory was that, at first they didn't see it at all when it was really close to the sun. And then it showed back up again, and they were kind of confused about that. And they're like, okay, well, as it started coming out, they're like, well, maybe the sun stripped off a lot of the excess, and that's just sort of the leftovers as it's jumbled together.
Just raw. It's just hard rock. All the water and moisture has been burned off. No more ice.
We wouldn't have seen it if it had been done that.
Okay, so because that's what we're seeing come off it, right? Is like the stuff burning off, right?
Yeah, it's the ice.
Yeah.
Sublimating, so it's ice and taking off some dirt with it, essentially, a rock.
Yeah.
So it's leaving a trail behind it like that.
Hey, I've seen the movies. I remember when Bruce Lee, what's his face, landed on an asteroid and planted bombs in it. I've seen all that. I know how it works. Armageddon, remember, Heather?
This is where science, the theater of the mind, Chris.
You've seen Armageddon, right, Heather?
Science is glaring at you.
Okay, sorry.
But they've seen comets act weird before. Yeah. They've actually seen a coronal mass ejection hit a comet, strip off all of its tail, so it was completely gone, and then it got a new tail. So they've seen a lot of weird things happen with comets, but this one definitely confused them again.
Okay. Well, it was a good show. It was fun to watch, at least.
It was, and it had brightened there for a brief period of time. Right before it went to the sun, there were a couple of days where you could actually see it with the naked eye.
Yeah.
Heather, and it was sort of one last hurrah.
Do you know when our next big comet show is going to be? Because this was a fun one.
This was. Now, it's really hard to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All now, right. there's some know. That are. Yeah, if there any big ones pop up on my radar, I'll definitely let you guys know.
Okay. We'll go on Comet Watch again.
Yes.
All right. Well, why don't we do a little spacecraft update? That's how you know it's time, right there.
That's right. SciByte, a couple weeks ago in November and then in October, we were talking about India's Mars orbiter mission called MOM.
Called MOM, yeah.
Yeah, called MOM. So they actually were able to take their first ever image for them of Earth.
Oh.
So it was their first color image. They were able to take it looking back on November 20th. They were able to take it sort of at about the height and resolution that they'll be on Mars for a while. So it gave them a really good idea of how the color camera is working, kind of. Yeah, very good perspective of like, all right, here's how it looks. Here's what we should expect.
Wow.
And this is the one where they were kind of doing it on the cheaper side. So they didn't just do one blast off straight to Mars. What they did is they launched it and they were going into elliptical orbits.
Right.
They got bigger each time.
Yeah.
And then finally it was able to swing off to Mars. And it did its last firing of the engine on December 1st, which means it's heading off and it'll be 10 months or so before it hits Mars. And so then they will kind of hit in a similar thing where they hit elliptical orbits around Mars instead of going smaller and smaller until they can actually kind of view Mars for a little while.
That's really neat. It's kind of neat to see what the perspective is when you look at it from Earth, because that's obviously something that's much easier for me to put in perspective. And it kind of looks like there's a little bit of an Instagram filter on that photo. Now, China's also got something going on too, don't they?
They do. They have had their first ever launch of a lunar rover. It's headed to the moon, and it's funny, they call it the U2 rover. Not YouTube, but YUTU, which essentially translates to jackrabbit, which involves some, Chinese fairy tales type stuff. But so this little guy is going to this will be the first soft landing on the moon since the 70s, late 70s, I think. Yeah, since 76.
Okay.
So if it succeeds. So it's about 150 centimeters, 5 feet tall, about 120 kilograms, 265 pounds. So they've got a couple of cameras, a spectrometer, a little telescope, some radar, various sensors. So they're kind of hoping to maybe go 3 months on that thing. So it's just another kind of country heading on its way, trying to reach out into the system.
Did you, when you were reading about this, did you catch anything about in terms of where it is in relation to the Apollo landings?
It's going to be a decent enough distance from them. I'm trying to remember exactly the distance, but I know
imagine they wouldn't want to disturb the area if possible. So
yes, there was definitely a call out amongst that, because there's sort of rules, unofficial rules, and then official rules about where you can land in perspective with other countries' landers.
Yeah. You don't want to interfere with their science or their historic areas. So
yeah.
Well, neat. Well, keep us posted on that too, would you? That sounds like a
definitely
good one to
will.
Follow. All right, Heather. Well, then jump into the time machine, because it is time for us to go back. Close the door.
Right.
Close the door. All right, here we go. A little bumpy. It's a little bumpy. I'm sorry. I got to get the stabilizers fixed. It's the quantum gyroscopes. This trip takes us 112 years ago, December 10th, 1901. Heather, what happened this week in science?
The first Nobel Prizes were awarded.
Oh.
So the King of Sweden distributed the first Nobel Prizes according to the will of Alfred Nobel. And he'd actually left in his will provisions for this kind of awards and money for them and how to continue it on.
Oh.
And actually, his story is kind of weird, because he'd done that. And one day he's reading the newspaper and he reads his own obituary.
Oh, what?
Because they accidentally printed the fact that he had died before he died, which he thought was fairly amusing.
Oh.
He thought that was fairly amusing. But when he actually did, his will provided for this. And the first Nobel Prize in physics was awarded for the discovery of X-rays. The prize in chemistry was for rates of reaction, equilibrium, and osmotic pressure. And physiology or medicine was given for the work on serum therapy, particularly for diphtheria.
That is the X-ray. I mean, wow. And so we're talking 112 years ago this week. That's really something, 1901.
Yeah.
All right, well, let me recalibrate the SciByte 2000. That way we can look up into the sky this week.
That's right. On Wednesday, December the 4th, at twilight, you're going to be able to see the waxing crescent moon. Is going to be to the far lower right of Venus. We roll on to Thursday, December the 25th, in the twilight. Now Venus is going to sit about 7 degrees to the lower left of the moon. Remember, 5 degrees is 3 of your middle fingers held it together at arm's length. And on Friday, then the moon will be high above Venus in the southwestern sky. So they're kind of doing a little dance over there. And on Saturday, it'll be the earliest sunset of the year.
Oh.
Now, not the longest night.
Okay.
The longest night is December 21st. And in fact, the latest sunrise is January 4th.
Oh, so we're going into a window here of...
Yes. Now, the reason it doesn't all match up is because there's a difference between solar time and actual time. It's just because, think of it, as the Earth is rotating around the sun, so you're moving along this orbit. Now, one rotation of the Earth at one point in the orbit, if you move forward, if the Earth moves forward just a little bit, then it's out of sync just a little bit. So up to 16 minutes across the year. So it kind of throws things out of sync a little bit, which is why the earliest sunset, the longest night, and the earliest sunrise don't all match up. But on Saturday, it is the earliest sunset of the year. The planets in general this week, you've got Saturn at dawn. Saturn's in the east to southeastern skies, and it's sort of popping back into view there it was gone for a while because it was too close to the sun to see, and now you're being able to see it again as it moves farther and farther away from the sun now. Venus is still our bright evening star in the southwest during or after dusk, and it won't be setting till about 1.5 hours after dark. Mars is going to be rising at 1 a.m. because it's a night owl, and it'll be moving to the high eastern skies by dawn. Jupiter, another popular planet on here, will be 7 or 8 p.m. local time, rising in the east to northeast, and it'll be reaching its highest point about 2 a.m. So in the evening, around twilight, you're going to be able to see two bright things in the southwestern sky. That's where the sun is setting. That's Venus. And on the opposite side, in the east-northeast, that's Jupiter.
Very nice. And of course, it's all outlined at the bottom of the SciByte show notes. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, find SciByte 111, and then just scroll through that whole thing. Lots of goodness. You know that dinosaur bone we were talking about? 3D printed dinosaur bone? Picture of that in the show notes. So why would you go over there? Heather, is there anything else we want to cover this week?
Not that I can think of.
Wow. Well, how about that? Okay, everyone. We'd love to have you join us next week. You can do that live on a Tuesday over at jblive.tv, or you can download the show on a Wednesday morning. Don't forget, you can also contact the show. You can find our contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting site, and you can also go grab our limited t-shirt. It's just going to be 1 week and 4 days left over at teespring.com/Jupiter2014. Heather, thanks for the great show, and have a great week.
Thank you, and you too.
All right, everyone, thank you for tuning in this week's episode of SciByte. We'll see you right back here next week.